Hello and welcome to a special impromptu edition of Deprogrammed. I'm your host, Keri Smith, and we're doing a live episode today, part 2 of Dinner with Racists, aka Deconstructing Karen. If it's your first time here and you like the show, please consider subscribing to the channel or hitting like or leaving a comment. That helps the algorithm. And if you don't like the show, also leave a comment. That helps the algorithm. So thank you very much for being here. And thanks to some of the regulars from Deprogrammed who I see in the chat. Hello, Ninja Kitty is here. Wicked Sykes. I'm glad you guys could hang out today. Hey, Dawn. Davina. Good to see you guys. John, Therese, Dion, Queen of Quotes. Anyway, we couldn't cover everything yesterday. Yesterday we started watching this documentary called Deconstructing Karen, and we only got 15 minutes into it. But that's because we talked a lot up front about what the documentary is about the organization Race2Dinner, and I plan to get through the rest of it today. So if you're not familiar, if you didn't see the episode from yesterday, it's called Dinner with Racists, Part 1. I would recommend checking it out first if you're finding this video later. And we're going to continue where we left off. A brief refresher if you happen to be watching this live and you haven't seen the first one. Race2Dinner is an organization started by two con artists, woke grifters. There's lots of different kinds of grifters. These are specifically, they are of the woke flavor, woke or social justice flavor, whatever you want to call it. And they charge $2,500 per person. Well, that was 3 years ago. It's probably more now. But they used to charge $2,500 a person to attend a brainwashing woke dinner. They say that the purpose of the dinner is to learn to be anti-racist, but of course, anti-racist is a code word within social justice, within woke, that means racist. So these are women who are signing up with some good intent, some of them, yes, signing up with good intent because they want to learn how to be anti-racist, and they're actually being brainwashed to become the woke flavor of racist at these dinners. They're paying to be berated for their whiteness and for their white supremacy. What we learned in part 1 in the first 15 minutes of Deconstructing Karen is that, and I told you guys this, social justice woke cultists do not like the phrase colorblind. They don't believe in working towards a colorblind society. They outright reject Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream of judging people by the content of their character instead of by the color of their skin. It is a racist belief system, social justice is, woke is, that says we must judge people based on what identity groups they're in. We must judge them and treat them differently based on these identity groups. That makes it a collectivist ideology as opposed to an individualist ideology. It's not individualist. It's not liberal. It's illiberal. It's collectivist. Another collectivist ideology based on race is white supremacy. This is the other side of that same racist coin. And so it was pretty funny because we heard two of these unsuspecting women at the dinner mention that they were colorblind. One of them said she has a husband who's Latino. She's always tends to had dated outside of her race. Another one who said she has 2 kids and she would like for them to live in a colorblind society. And one of them said, we're all the same. When we cut ourselves, we bleed red. And the con artists, Saira Rao and Regina Jackson, who run this grift, immediately reacted negatively to those things. And it was funny. I knew they were going to react negatively, but I didn't know how far they were going to go. She actually said, Saira Rao said, "I'm about to drop a bomb." And she said that, and she did. She said they were white supremacists. She said that if you want to live in a colorblind society, a society where people are judged based on who they are and on the content of their character and their behavior, if you want to live in that kind of society instead of judging people based on race, that you are a white supremacist. She like, they dropped the white supremacist bomb right out the gate. You ladies are white supremacists, okay? Why? Because you don't want to live in a racist world. Okay. We're gonna keep going. Um, let's see. Let me just check the chat. Super Based is back. Thank you, sir. I love your avatar. Super Based gifted 5 more Deprogram memberships. You guys give it up for Super Base. Oh, and hey, give it up for one of our mods. Robert Lowry is here. Blue Kitty hat. Yes. This hat is I've worn before. This is one of the ones from Blocked Magazine's June issue where they're reclaiming the cat hat, and they call it the oogly cat pattern. If you want to, Blocked Magazine is free. You can get it online. It's put together by some problematic knitters, and it's edited by Mr. Neil James, aka they call him, the woke knitters call him literally Knitler, which is hilarious. We call him Socrates. But the June issue, they asked me to model some of the hats, and so I got all these beautiful hats from ladies, and this is one of my favorites. That reminds me, I will make one other announcement. Politically Incorrect Knitters asked me to be the judge for a knitting competition that they held for the fall, and I don't know if they've posted it yet, but I did select the winner. And when I do see that they've posted it, I'll share the winner. But I got to judge, and it was really hard because there were so many great knitting designs and patterned shawls and socks and sweaters, and you guys are so talented. But that was an honor getting to pick the winner for that. And if you are not familiar with Politically Incorrect Knitters, you should check them out. They have a podcast, and they talk about knitting and politics and culture, and they are a fun bunch of broads. So there you go. Okay, let's get started. There you are. There you are, Therese. I thought I saw you. She says, all the cool kids knit. Okay. We're going to continue with Deconstructing Karen. Let's just get right into it so we hopefully make it through today. Oh, wait. I know I said get right into it. One more thing. A couple people responded in the comments to the video from yesterday about, at the beginning when I was talking about my husband is really getting into baking, and we're baking our own. All right, we're actually grinding the flour. And so somebody in the chat, Broken Umbrella, was saying, oh, this might actually change my life because I thought I had all these allergies and I couldn't eat bread. You should try it. I don't know if it'll help, but I've read testimonials from people who say it helps. Again, many of you probably know more about this than I do, but from what I've read, what my husband's been telling me, the videos he's been watching, the way that we make bread in the States is really different than the way it's made in some other countries. And the whole process of making white flour, like they strip the wheat berry of all of the nutrients and vitamins. And, the industry basically realized they could separate the wheat berry. It's in 3 parts. They could separate it out, and they could make white flour out of one part of it, and which doesn't have any of the vitamins or nutrients. And then they could sell one of the other parts to the agricultural industry, sell it for feed for livestock and stuff. And, they're basically making money off of all the parts of the wheat. But what happens when you do that is, over time, they noticed all these people were developing these different allergies and illnesses and stuff because of the white flour didn't have any of the nutrients and vitamins. So then they started injecting synthetic vitamins into the wheat. That's when you see it in the store and it says like enriched, as they've put these synthetic vitamins into it. So it's just messed up. And a lot of people seem to have some allergies or gluten intolerance. Even some people think they're gluten intolerant when it's really just their body is having a reaction to this, to the way that the flour is made here in the States. And so it's not that difficult. Anthony told me to tell you guys, if he can figure it out, you can figure it out. He bought something called a Wonder Mill. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments on this video. he'll answer them or I will answer them. And if you have been making your bread forever, like Texas Sheep Lady has already been giving me tips, if you have tips and you've been doing this for a long time, feel free to put those in the comments also for people who are going to try this out like us. He also got a book by Sue Becker, and it's I forget the name. Oh man, I'll have to put it in the comments. But it's basically everything you need to know about homemade baking and making your own flour. So this mill that he got called Wonder Mill has like different settings based on what you're baking. You just put the wheat berries in there. He's getting the wheat berries from a place called Unsifted, and then you put them in there and you make the flour. And we had homemade pasta the other night that we made from our own flour. It's delicious. The muffins are delicious. It just tastes better. It doesn't taste like, ooh, healthy. It tastes really good. And yeah, I would suggest trying it out if you're curious. Okay. I do not have a sponsorship from them. But if you're listening, Unsifted, wait, hey. Okay, let's go. Let's watch this. Oh man, here she is. Saira Rao, head racist at Race2Dinner. So we just listened to her. This is where they just started berating the two white women who said they were colorblind or they wanted to live in a colorblind society. So we're continuing there with what's wrong with this, right? You're watching the beginning stages of a brainwashing for some of these women. And again, I'm going to remind you, these are the women who go to these things that are wealthy, liberal, white women. It's a specific demographic that they target. It's an observable fact that these are the people who go, almost exclusively people in this demographic. There are others, but almost exclusively women who are wealthy, liberal, and white. And even the organizers in this documentary admitted that at the beginning. We saw them talk about that and how they target this group of women. Of course, they say it's because these women are the most open to change and they have access to power because they have filthy white husbands. But it's because that's the easy mark. That for this kind of grift, that is the easy mark. White women are very susceptible to this. Actually, I am going to show you one more thing. Right before we started, Dion, Queen of Quotes, who's in the chat, sent me this great quote. And here we go. Let's pull this up. Can you see that? This is a quote from Eric Hoffer from the book The True Believer: Thoughts on the Nature of Mass Movements. This is an excellent quote. Quote, "The boredom of spinsters and of women who can no longer find joy and fulfillment in marriage stems from an awareness of a barren, spoiled life. By embracing a holy cause and dedicating their energies and substance to its advancement, they find a new life full of purpose and meaning. Hitler made full use of, quote, the society ladies thirsting for adventure, sick of their empty lives, no longer getting a kick out of love affairs," end quote. He was financed by the wives of some of the great industrialists long before their husbands had heard of him. Miriam Beard tells of a similar role played by bored wives of businessmen before the French Revolution. Quote, "They were devastated with boredom and given to fits of the vapors. Restlessly, they applauded innovators." There's something here. There is something to this. There's something to the fact that wealthy women seem to be more susceptible to social justice ideology and to other kinds of cults. There's something to that. And it made me think of this Bible verse here from 2 Timothy 3, verses 6-7. "They are the kind who worm their way into homes and gain control over gullible women who are loaded down with sins and are swayed by all kinds of evil desires, always learning, but never able to come to a knowledge of the truth." This second part of this verse is so descriptive for social justice. Always learning, but never coming to truth. But they're always learning. They're always doing the work. They're always educating themselves. They're always reading the approved cult literature, the books they're supposed to read, like Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility, like Ibram X. Kendi. They're always learning, but never actually arriving at truth. Okay. One other quick thing on that. There was a feminist in my comments this morning who said, when I mentioned the fact that it is wealthy, liberal, white women who go to these things, who pay the money for these kind of brainwashing seminars where they become more racist. She was like, white women in all caps. And then she accused me of blaming the victim and said that the women are going to the things like Race2Dinner because of the patriarchy. No. I'm not going to get off on too big of a tangent, but I entirely reject that premise. And you may be under the mistaken belief that I'm a feminist. I'm not. I used to be, because I used to be woke. Actually, I got into woke through the feminist door. There's lots of different all the identity doors. Woke, or social justice, is an ideology that says the best way to look at the world is as a competition for power among identity groups, between identity groups. And it says that all of these groups need to be put into the oppressor or the oppressed category, the privileged or the marginalized category, and that we won't reach equality until we have evened out the power between groups, not between individuals, between groups, between identity groups. And that's why they say we must look at people as identity group members, not as individuals. We must look at them as what is their race, what is their sex, what is their sexuality, and we must judge and treat them differently based on what identity group they're in, because that's the way we equal out the power between the groups. It's a messed up ideology. Yes, but that's what I was in for 2 decades. And when I left social justice and woke, I didn't just leave it, parts of it, like some people have done. I didn't just leave it like the trans ideology part of it, or just the race part of it, or just the size part of it, where they talk about people of size and how fat people are oppressed and skinny people are the oppressors, whatever. I didn't leave just one or a couple of the different identity parts of it. I left the sex part too, the gender part too. I don't believe that we live in a patriarchy. I don't, any more than I believe that we live in a white supremacy. I don't believe that's the best lens through which to view our culture, the world, or even history. I don't. That's not the lens I use anymore. And so one of the horrible things about this ideology is that it's so simplistic. It's like, in some ways, they tried to everything is black and white. Excuse the pun, but everything is women are always because they're in an oppressed group, they're always the victim. They're not responsible for any bad behavior. There's nothing else ever going on. There's there's no reason to do science. There's no reason to ask questions, because the answer is always the patriarchy and sexism. And they do the same thing with race. The answer is always white supremacy and racism. And so to say, well, we shouldn't, first of all, it's an observable fact that the people paying to go to Race2Dinner are wealthy, liberal, white women. That's observable. And to say that that's blaming the victim to observe that fact is crazy. I am going to observe facts. The opinion part of what I was saying is why I think it happens to be this demographic. And I said, I think it's because they have a God-shaped hole. They are in search of a redemptive experience, and they want to be thought of as good people. That's part of it anyway. That's also not blaming the victim. This person who said, no, they're going because of the patriarchy. No, it doesn't make any sense to me. I reject it outright. So we are not the same. I think some people, especially the ones who get called TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists, the ones who consider themselves feminists, and they can see how this ideology is toxic and the cult-like ways it operates when it comes to trans issues, but they can't see it the way it operates when it comes to the issue of biological sex of men and women. They still have blinders on. They still use the language of the ideology and talk about oppressed and oppressor and all this stuff. I don't believe that. I'm sorry. I don't think women are inherently victims. I don't think we're inherently oppressed. I don't think everything that we do that's weird or wrong is the fault of men and the patriarchy. I think that's just as incorrect as to say, everything that people of color do wrong or weird is the fault of white people and white supremacy. It's just stupid. Okay. Let's bring this up. Now I've got the volume cranked up because I think it was pretty low last time. I hope this works.
And so what does nice mean for white women? It means smiling. It means being polite. It means not calling out oppression when it happens.
When you say you're colorblind, you erase us.
But you're not being defensive as well. I don't.
We're sharing our truth,
and I'm sharing my truth too. I mean, that to me is saying
we need to educate ourselves so much because we have no idea.
Is that what this conversation is about? Some education?
Change requires pain. Most people will not change until they have what I call a significant emotional event.
And I also want to lay a couple of other things down. You've mentioned it and you've mentioned it. Being married to a Black person or a brown person, having brown or Black children does not make you impervious to racism. You cannot, frankly, fuck your way out of racism.
Okay. We've already covered this in the first video, but just a quick refresher. In these kind of woke cult settings, there is a double standard. Yes, of course there's a double standard because they're going to go to the easiest identity category they can to shut you up. The real rule, they won't tell you this, but the real rule in social justice is you are not allowed to speak against the ideology. It sounds like a cult because it is a cult. You can, it doesn't matter actually your race, your sex, your sexuality, if you're trans or not, whatever. It actually doesn't matter as long as you're speaking woke and speaking the cult lexicon and pushing the ideology into the world. If you're saying all the approved cult things you're supposed to say, they will not tell you if you're a white person, even if you're a straight white man, as long as you're speaking the cult language, fine. They won't tell you to sit down and shut up and listen to Black people, et cetera, et cetera. If you though are if you're not speaking the woke ideology, they will go after you. If you are a white person like these women, the easiest way they do that is by attacking your race. If you're a man, they do it by attacking your sex. If you're straight, they attack your sexuality. They go after whatever oppressor group category you're in. So you will see at this dinner, it's easy for them to do this. They don't have to get any convoluted about it because these are all white women. So basically it's like, they get to be defensive, but none of the white women do. Why? Because you're white. They get to speak their truth and share their experience, but none of the white women do. Why? Because you're white. They get to be emotional. You don't get to be emotional. Why? Because you're white. Now, if it were Candace Owens at this dinner party, who's a Black conservative woman, they wouldn't be able to use the shut up because you're white. So what you see they do with conservatives or with anyone who's not woke, who is in what they call the oppressed groups, like Candace Owens is in 2 of the so-called oppressed groups. She's Black and she's a woman. If she were sitting here saying the exact same things the white women are saying, that she wants to live in a colorblind society, they would say they can't say shut up because you're white, you're wrong because you're white. They will say you are a token. You have internalized your oppression. You've internalized your racism. You've internalized your sexism against yourself. You've internalized racism against yourself. They will attack you in a different way. because at the end of the day, again, it's not really about the things they say. They contradict themselves all the time. It's not about listening to voices of color like they like to pretend. It's not. They will tell you up and down 100 times, do not listen to Candace Owens. That's a voice of color. Don't listen to her. Don't listen to Thomas Sowell. Don't listen to Larry Elder. Don't listen to gay people like Mike Harlow or Brendan Straub. Don't listen to them. Don't listen to trans people like Sarah Higdon. Oh my goodness. Or Buck Angel. Don't listen to them. Why? Because they've internalized their own oppression in their tokens. It's never about the thing they say it's about. Underneath, they use race, they use all this identity politics stuff up here to divide people and to be able to. It's sort of like, I know I mentioned this before, but it's like a shell game. This is what they use to dismiss criticism easily if you happen to be in one of those groups. But they will dismiss the criticism if you're in one of the oppressed groups by saying, well, then you've just internalized it. But the real rule is not white people be quiet, listen to voices of color. That's what they say. The real rule is, if you're not speaking woke, be quiet and listen to people who are speaking woke. That's it. Only cult approved opinions. Don't listen to non-cultists. Yes, that's the real rule.
Let me ask you a question. How many of you would trade places with a Black person in this society? Raise your hand.
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, it's yes or no. How many?
Now, and now this is a trick too, because pick some. They're picking again, going based on what they define as oppressed and oppressor. They're saying basically, would you trade places with a Black person? Would you become a member of an oppressed group? Well, first of all, which Black person? But second of all, they would never do this they would never ask if these women who they put in an oppressed group, the oppressed group of women, would choose to be a man who they put in the oppressor group. How many of you would choose to be a man? Huh? I wouldn't choose to be anyone other than myself. So I'm going to answer no matter what the question is. If they were to ask me, though, which they're not going to do, would you trade places with a man? And I say no. Well, they can't use that. They can't use that to say, see how oppressed men are, because they don't call men oppressed. See how oppressed men are? You don't want to be one. That's not part of their ideology. Oh, and one other thing about what Saira said about you can't F your way out of racism. It doesn't matter if you have friends who are people of color and you have a spouse who's of color or your kids are of color. It doesn't matter, right? Like, it actually kind of does. This is another thing I saw this creeping in about probably 30 years ago now when I was deep in it. And I became one of the people who said this is, if any person said, but I don't understand why you're calling me racist. Like, I actually don't see color, meaning I don't judge and treat people differently on the basis of race. And, I don't understand. I have lots of friends who are Black or Indian or Latino or whatever. And I've married to someone who's of color, or I have kids who are of color, whatever. They will say, oh, you're using the some of my friends are Black thing, huh? As if it is absurd to observe a fact and to interpret things from it. Like, if I observe that a man is friends with lots of women and respects their opinion and treats them well, it is not weird to point to that as an example of how here's one example of why I don't think he's a sexist. Do you know what I mean?
Many of you would do it.
I know I wouldn't. I mean, I dated a Hispanic, very dark.
No, I'm not talking about Hispanic. The question is,
but I was going to have children. So I spent many years thinking of myself of having very dark skinned children.
Question is,
They're judging her.
how many of you would be willing to trade places in this society with a Black person?
I think I would.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna say
Absolutely.
yes.
Absolutely. Okay.
I'm not saying there's not racism. Absolutely not. It's just saying I don't see it.
Yeah, but you know how
Not-
racist this country
Not
is.
to the degree that you do.
Oh,
To
no,
be
you
frank
will
with
never know. You know, in this country, we created the criminalization of Black people. And when your skin is seen as a weapon, you're never unarmed. And that's why Black boys and men and women are dying in the street with their hands up.
This is a myth. This is an absolute lie. And if you go and look at the statistics and ask them to look at the statistics, they will. What will they do? They'll fall back on one of their immediate things. If you're a white person asking them to do it, well, this is just your white privilege. It's because you're white that you're saying that. They will not look at data. They do not believe in following the science. They canceled Roland Fryer. Do you guys know who Roland Fryer is? I talked about him a few years ago. Let me see if I can pull up something about him. So he's a Harvard, or was a Harvard economist, and he happens to be Black, also happens to be a liberal. And when this myth of, oh, there's an epidemic of unarmed Black men dying in the streets at the hands of cops, when that first started being put, that piece of propaganda started being put into the media, I believed that at first too. A lot of people believed that at first. He believed it. He wanted to prove it in a study. And so he started evaluating all of the data. And he actually, being an honest person, shocker, put out the studies and showed that it's a complete myth, that you are more likely to die. There are more cops killed per year in the line of duty than there are unarmed Black men. It's been a while since I've looked at the data. It was less than 10 people. How many people were in the US? And they want to pretend like this is an epidemic and something that Black people should fear when they go outside or they have interactions with police. No, they are creating a boogeyman. They are selling a lie to young Black people and telling them this. You should be afraid. You should be afraid of the cops. They're selling it to white people. A lot of white liberals believe this crap. Somebody, if you have a second to pull up one of the Roland Fryer studies, I would appreciate the number. Let me see. But I'll just show you this article about it, about one of the studies he did here. This is from the Boston Review, Race, Policing, and the Limits of Social Science. And this was from 2021. And it says, in 2016, economist Roland G. Fryer Jr., the youngest African-American ever to be awarded tenure at Harvard, came, and by the way, they formed a cancellation mob for this guy after the fact. You can imagine, because, oh, he's a Black guy and he's saying that this isn't true and he did a study about it. Oh, we're going to go after him. Of course they did. Of course they did. What do you think they said about him? He's internalized his own racism. He's a token. Never mind that he's a liberal. Okay. The youngest African-American ever to be awarded tenure at Harvard came upon what he would call, quote, the most surprising result of my career, end quote. In a study of racial differences in the use of force by police officers, Fryer found that Black and Hispanic civilians were no more likely than white civilians to be shot to death by police. Quote, protesting is not my thing, Fryer told the New York Times, but data is my thing. So I decided that I was going to collect a bunch of data and try to understand what really is going on when it comes to racial differences in police use of force. 3,000 hours later, after meticulous record collection and analysis, the data had spoken. Although Black people are significantly more likely to experience non-lethal force at the hands of police than white people in similar situations, Fryer concluded there is no racial bias in fatal police shootings. The findings appeared to have direct implications for the growing protest movement that has swept across the U.S. following the police killings of Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, and Philando Castile, among so many others. You can actually read the first study he did. Here's the name of it. You can find this online if you want to type it in. It's called an empirical analysis of racial differences in police use of force. He's not the only one who found this when looking at the data, by the way. You can go look at the raw data yourself, but they won't do that. The people at this dinner will not do that. And if you're in a conversation with a woke cultist and you bring this up, I will say probably 99% of the time they won't go read it. They're not curious. They're in a cult. They're going to outright reject any data that doesn't support the ideology, the way of looking at the world that they're trying to spread. But you should know this. Okay, we'll get back to the video. I've got to get through this video today. I know I keep doing tangents. Okay.
I was born in 1950 and everything was in black and white. I am myself now almost 70, 4 generations out of slavery.
Oh my gosh, though, look at this.
I was born in 1950 and everything was in black and white. I am myself.
Look how cute she is. I just had to pause it on that. If that's her right there, I think the little girl in the front left. Look, she looks like the camera person just, you know how sometimes they get kids to smile? The camera person just surprised her.
Self, now almost 70, 4 generations out of slavery. And that should tell you something. I am a mother. I have 2 adult children. I have 4 grandchildren, 11 siblings, and each of them has children. So this work is so important to me. The more you think about white privilege and racism, the more you get why white people don't want to talk about it. They just want to be in denial, denial, denial. I don't think as a Black person, I have the luxury of sitting around and doing nothing, because the lives of my grandchildren and my children depend on me being active in this space. We have to be in this because our life depends on it. We have one rule, and that is if you're going to cry, leave the table and go into the living room there.
It's right there.
What did I tell you? I'm like predicting everything that's going to happen because, again, it's a cult. So if you know the playbook, if you know how this plays out in every community and every one of these kind of conferences or dinners, you know what they're going to do. I told you, they don't allow they call it white tears. We talked about this in the first video. And even in this one, I think I mentioned emotion. You are not allowed to express emotion if you are a white person. They can express emotion, but you're not. And I can already predict what they're going to say. You're making it all about yourself. You're centering your whiteness. You're centering your white privilege, your white fragility. If you show emotion, they coin terms for it, so it sounds academic, so it sounds real. This thing this abusive dynamic that they've made up. It's white fragility. Take this and apply it to, sometimes it helps to understand a toxic or abusive or cult-like ideology. It helps to understand it better if you look at it on an individual level, if you make that analogy. So for example, if you understand the way a person with cluster B personality disorder operates, a person with narcissism or borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder or antisocial personality disorder. If you understand their tactics because you've had the misfortune of having one in your life in some way, it's better, you're better able to understand how a toxic ideology like social justice operates, because it uses a lot of the same tactics but on a large scale. So just imagine for a second that you're in a relationship with someone, an individual relationship with someone, where they are allowed to have opinions, you're not, and they have a fancy word for why you're not. They are allowed to cry and have emotions, but you're not. Why? Well, when you do it, it's fragility, but not when they cry. They are allowed to speak their truth and use anecdotal evidence to back up their opinions, just anecdotal evidence. But you're not. You're not allowed to use anecdotes or your personal experience, your truth, but they are. It is abusive what they're doing. So this is the part of the dinner now where apparently, again, you can predict, even you can predict, if you start to learn their tactics and the way they speak, you can predict what's going to happen. So now they're telling the white woman, you can't cry at this table. If you want to cry, go over there. Look at Saira pointing to the cry corner. You got to go to the cry corner. Okay, let's see what else they say about this, because they really hate white fragility.
And there's some Kleenex and whatever you need. Does anybody know why we would have that rule?
Because this is about white supremacy and not our personal feelings, right?
Mm-hmm. And when a white woman starts crying, what happens?
All the attention is to
Everybody
that
goes
woman.
back.
Yeah, all the attention. So that's the only rule that we have.
Wait for it. They're probably going to say that the white women weaponize their tears. So you having a human emotion as a result of being, in this case, maybe called something you're not, like called a white supremacist because you want your kids to not be racist. That makes you a white supremacist. Let's say you're a woman here who starts to have a normal human reaction to this kind of psychological abuse and gaslighting, and let's say you feel emotional about it. That's further evidence of your white supremacy. You are weaponizing your emotion. You're always the bad guy. It's abusive. It is abusive. This is gaslight. This is what gaslighting means. It's telling you you're crazy when what they're doing to you is crazy. But no, you're crazy for thinking it's weird, right?
Does anyone want to cry right now? No? Okay. All right. So I want a show of hands of everyone at this table who is racist.
I want to cry. So I can't sit here?
She wants to
You gotta
cry
go. Sorry,
because
sis.
she's admitting she's
I have to
racist.
hold it in.
Okay.
Okay. This is in the first video we talked about struggle sessions. This is a struggle session. This is where, like in communist China, or if you think about the Soviet Union and they were putting people in gulags, this is where you are being manipulated and gaslit into confessing something you didn't do. And think of the Salem witch trials. That's a great example. Confessing that you're a witch. Douglas Murray calls this the madness of crowds. What's happening psychologically here. And so you are being pushed to admit to something that's not true and to confess a sin that's not true. And then when you do that, here's what's causing the emotion. Remember how the Black woman, Regina Jackson, said, for a lot of these women to change, we need pain. We need pain. We need emotion. You're going to be punished for the emotion, but they make no mistake. They want you to feel the emotion, but you're going to be punished for it too. On the other side of that emotion, this woman is crying because maybe she believes what she's saying. I am a racist too. I'm part of this too. Maybe part of her believes it, has become convinced of it. But also because on the other side of that, there's that fake redemption that they're searching for. If you think of like a perverted Christianity, a perversion of Christianity, They're seeking that absolution. They're seeking forgiveness. They want to be good people. And for some reason, they think these two con artists and sociopaths who are leading this dinner, that their opinion is what matters. Why? Because they're Black and Indian, because they're people of color. And they claim to be experts at teaching you how to be a non-racist. And so she's like crying because she's imagining the relief that's going to come, or she hopes will come, when you get the pat on the head from the abuser, when you get the trauma bonding afterwards. This is all psychological, what's happening to these women. You can talk about it in political terms, cultural terms, spiritual terms, psychological terms. A lot of it is best understood, I think, in psychological terms.
So I saw a couple people surprised that I raised my hand. When I said that I was racist, I am racist against Black people. So it's institutional. Indians are institutionally racist against Black people. The only person at this table that cannot be institutionally racist against anybody is who?
It's the Black lady. Look at how self-satisfied the Black lady looks. Look at her. She's shaking her head going, me. I can't be racist. Yes, this is they really teach this. So they teach. Now, I like the fact that Saira used the phrase institutionally racist, because here's what's funny. If you ask them why, a social justice cultist, why are you trying to change the definition of racism? Was they say they are trying to program you to think that racism is dependent upon a person's race, like what race they are. Whether or not they can experience racism or dish racism out, they say that's dependent on what race you are, which is a racist thing to say. And it's not true. But they say it's dependent on what race you are, and they say it depends on if you're in one of the groups that they say has power and is the oppressor group or the privileged group. Okay. So based on what they have been teaching for decades now, what they programmed me with, what they are currently programming kids in elementary school with, they say it is impossible for a Black person to be racist, and it is impossible to be racist to a white person. What's interesting about this is, so they say racism equals prejudice plus power. And they don't mean individual power. They mean the power that they've assigned to your identity group. If you are in an identity group that they say has power, like white people or men or straight people or skinny people, if you're in one of those groups, you're the baddie. You're capable of doing the baddie thing. And if you're not in that group, you're not. So they put all the other races somewhere in the middle. They put Indian and Asian and everything else in the middle. And so that's why she's saying, I am racist also. I am racist towards Black people. Why? Because I'm in the Indian group. We're in the middle somewhere. It's like a stack. So she would say, Saira would say, that it's impossible for her to be racist to a white person. That's why she says all this racist stuff about white people all the time. And they don't view it as racist because they've redefined racism. She would say it's impossible for me to be racist to a white person. Why? Because I'm Indian. However, it is impossible for me to not be racist to a Black person. Why? Because I'm Indian and we're somewhere in the middle. It's ridiculous. I know it's ridiculous. But I like the fact that she used the phrase institutional racism, because here's a good question to ask people if you know someone who's in this cult and they are trying to tell you that racism equals prejudice plus power. Ask them, why is it necessary to redefine racism? And they will say sometimes, because there's a difference between prejudice, they will say, between prejudice and institutional racism. And so what I say to them is, well, you just use the phrase then. We already have a phrase for institutional racism or systemic racism. It's institutional racism or systemic racism. So why are you trying to define racism itself? Do you understand what I'm saying? You already have a phrase for it. So I'm a little shocked that she used that phrase, because they usually try and use racism itself alone as a standalone word to mean institutional racism. Okay, let's continue.
Regina.
White
Regina.
supremacy is what keeps Americans from having these conversations.
Institutional. Indians are institutionally racist against Black people. The only person at this table that cannot be institutionally racist against anybody is who? Regina.
White supremacy is what keeps Americans from having these conversations about race. And I think it was the great Frederick Douglass who said, power cedes nothing. It never has, and it never will. So what that means for us is white men are not going to give up their power. So that means we have to take it.
Power is central to this ideology. Again, if you look at Marxism as Marxism was an ideology, is an ideology that says the best way to view the world is as a competition for wealth among class groups. And we have to redistribute the wealth among these class groups to reach equality. Okay. So it's about wealth is at the center, and we have to redistribute that wealth between class groups. Okay. This is a mutated kind of Marxism. It's not Marxism by itself. It's a kind of, it grew out of Marxism and postmodernism and some other things, but that doesn't even matter. It helps to look at Marxism as an analogy. If you understand what Marxism was, it will help you understand this. Instead of being about a competition for wealth among class groups, social justice and woke says, no. It's a competition for power among identity groups. Power is at the center. We have to redistribute power among identity groups, and then we'll reach equality. That's how they view the world, and they think we should all view the world this way. And so you're going to hear them talk about power a lot, I'm sure. So she just talked about power there. And what did she say? Men, who they view as one of these a group that has power, an oppressor group, a privileged group, they're not going to give up their power. So we have to take it from them. How do they take power from men? On an individual level. They want you to judge and treat men differently. They want you to, if a man is up for a job and a woman is up for a job, and the man is better qualified, they still want you to pick the woman. They do the same thing with race. Look at these people. They pretend to be liberals, but they support racial discrimination. They support actual institutionalized racism, actual systemic racism in the college admissions process. If you have two students applying to Harvard, one is Asian, one is Black. They believe that Black people are more oppressed than Asians. Remember, Asians are somewhere in the middle. Even if that Asian person is much more qualified for that slot at Harvard, they want you to give it to the Black person, and they do give it to the Black person. This is why Asians sued recently, and we have this landmark Supreme Court decision that said, yeah, this is racist discrimination. It is racist discrimination. And they support that. They support racist and sexist discrimination because why? They think they have to take the power back from groups. And they do that by discriminating against individuals, by being racist and sexist towards individuals. And I said this in the first video, but I always like to ask them, okay, so at what point in the future, measurable end goal, what's the measurable end goal where you think we're going to be able to tell that we've reached equality now and the groups have equal power, and so we can stop doing racist discrimination, sexist discrimination to people? And they don't have an answer because it never stops. She said we have to take the power from men. That's what she said.
Deconstructing Karen is dismantling your own white supremacy. And deconstructing that for me was actually like removing the toxin from my body, where I could start acknowledging all of the poison
that I'd been swallowing and believing. It's deprogramming yourself.
I got to pause this because, of course, my show's called Deprogrammed. Here's what's funny. It's there's a lot of reversal. There's a lot of projection because what happened to this woman, Saira, if I take her at her word, which is a lot. I don't know that I don't think she's a trustworthy person, but let's take her at some of her word about her past. What happened to her is not a deprogramming. What happened to her is a programming. She ingested social justice woke ideology and programming that told her, hey, however you were looking at the world, she said she was a liberal before, so let's assume she was looking at the world through a liberal lens, an individualist lens, where you judge people by the content of their character and you judge people as individuals. You meet them as individuals, not as identity group members. She was programmed not to view the world that way anymore. She was programmed to view the world in this identity group based way, that you look at people as identity group members, and that's what determines how I should treat them. It's funny because it's a complete reversal in my opinion.
The only way I can say this is I feel like I had to break myself and shatter into so many pieces, and I'm slowly putting myself together. It has made me have to unlearn everything. It is deconstructing.
Funny enough, when I finally left woke, what she preaches and pushes, after 20 years of being in it, I felt like I was having to unlearn everything that I had except I hadn't learned it. I just accepted it. But I had to, I was full of all this woke garbage. And it was a long process coming out of it. Several years coming out of all the stuff that she pushes on people.
All of the harm that has been caused to me and all the harm that I have caused. And it is painful as fuck. My parents were Indian immigrants. They'd come over after the Immigration Act of 1965. And at that time in Richmond, there were Black people and there were white people, but there was really nobody who looked like me. Growing up in Richmond, Virginia, we were always taught as Indian kids to assimilate. And it was made very clear we were assimilating to white culture, not Black culture.
This is bullshit. What you were assimilating to was American culture. Woke wants you to see it as Black or white, but it was American culture. This makes me think of Thomas Sowell again. I know I mentioned Roland Fryer earlier, the Black economist who did the study at Harvard about lethal force in police encounters and race. But Thomas Sowell, if you don't know him, is one of probably the smartest people who's ever lived. is that too much of a superlative? I think he's just brilliant, and he's a Black economist. I never heard of him when I was in the woke cult because they don't want you to hear of people like him. They don't want you to read people like him because he doesn't speak woke. He speaks quite the opposite. But this makes me think of him a little bit because he has this great book. We read it for book club. It's called what is it? White Liberals and Black Rednecks. And in that book, he actually presents the argument that a lot of what gets called Black culture today originated from what he calls cracker culture, a specific part of Southern white culture with a specific demographic of white immigrants in the South. And it really makes you think, this book. So I would highly recommend it to anyone. But that aside, no, when you're coming to America, they often use the word white in place of American, or sometimes in place of Western. They use it in place of a lot of things that they want to criticize. So you were being asked to assimilate to American culture, not to white culture.
First time I felt other was in the 4th grade, and we'll call this boy Evan. Evan asked me to go with him. I'm not really sure where we were supposed to go, but people used to go together at that time. And I was super psyched. I was the only non-white kid in my class. I couldn't believe that this was happening. He was very popular. The next day, he said, meet me in the library. And I was like, oh my God, Evan's bringing me a Rubik's Cube or Skittles or something. And we go into the library, and he says to me, Saira, I'm really sorry, I can't go with you. My mom says that I can't go with black girls. I remember going home, going outside to the front yard, and I found a big rock, and I just started rubbing my skin, trying to take the brown off of my skin until I bled. My mother, she came home from work that day, and I was sitting on the front stoop, and I just looked at her and I said, you did this to me. You made me look like this. My mother was a doctor at the Veterans Administration, and she wore her sari to work every day in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s in Richmond, Virginia. And sometimes she'd come home from work and talk about how some of the patients would call her the N-word or Pocky, or she smells bad and they're not going to let someone like her, check them. And she would.
Let me pause this because I just want to. Some people are saying this is a lie or BS. I don't fault you for not trusting her. I don't trust a lot of woke evangelists, but I'm going to say this. This is not entirely unbelievable. And I don't deny, and I hope you don't deny, our culture has our culture that let's just talk about specifically the US though. We have a racist past. We absolutely do. We also have a racist present, but it's not the racism they're telling you it is. Currently, it's aimed against white people. But we have a racist past. We all know that. And it took a while for us to progress out of that. And I would argue that a lot of us, because of the unique way in which our founders set up the country, we were able to do that. We were one of the first countries to abolish slavery. We are a country where straight white men voted to give women the right to vote, voted to give Black people the right to vote. Like, we progressed. And a lot of that has to do with the vision of our founders. But yeah, we have a racist past, and racist cultural attitudes lingered. I don't buy into what they try to sell now in these woke programs, that it's still like it was in the 50s, or it's not. It's racist in a different way now. But yeah, look, I'm going to tell you guys a story. You may not believe this. Wicked Sykes says, I remember everybody getting along in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I do too, for the most part. It wasn't like it is now. However, I'm from a small Southern town. There were racist cultural attitudes. One of my first boyfriends was Black. My parents, mostly my mom, reacted very negatively. I was told I couldn't date him. I was told, and this was in the 90s in a small Southern town. And he wrote me letters. My mom confiscated the letters from the mailbox, so I didn't even get to read them. When he came to visit, he wasn't from my town, and I met him at the science and math school. When he came to visit, some old busybody on her porch saw us riding in the car together and called my mom and told her. And my mom was like, you can't ride around in the car with him. People will see you. Like, it was a huge fight. I think I got a beating for that. Let's be honest. There were so many I can't really remember. But the point is, yeah, these attitudes, I don't inherently, I'm just saying, the fact that some boy told her he couldn't go with her because his mom said, she was Black and he couldn't date Black, that's not unbelievable to me. What is amazing though about the story, here's the other side of that story. Here's what happened after that story. Society and culture kept progressing. We were on a path of progression for a long time through the 90s. And my parents are the type now who, they would probably be embarrassed I told that story, because they don't have any problem with me being married to someone who's not white, anymore. Like they moved with culture. Culture moved and they moved with culture. And that's what most people do. Most people are conformists. They go where the culture goes. That's why it's so important to try and steer culture in a good direction. Most people are conformists. Most people are part of the herd and the pack, and they're going to go where culture goes. And when culture goes to bad places, like towards social justice, which is evil and racist, we are regressing. Things were, even with that attitude then, that I'm talking about, where it was like, oh, I wasn't allowed to date a black guy. That was better than in some ways where we're at now. Like we've started regressing and going backwards. And now it's like the woke people who say you can't date out of race. They don't like it when you do that. Isn't that funny? The woke people. I don't know if the two running this grifting dinner are gonna say this. They did say if you date or marry a person who's not white, you're just trying to F your way out of racism. I don't know if they would explicitly say it's racist to do so, but I have seen that argument made. I'm sure you have. I've seen woke people make the argument that you should not date outside of your race. And that you definitely shouldn't adopt children outside of your race. They will attack you if you're a white person who adopts outside of your race. So we're going backwards. Anyway, let's continue.
Say, okay, well, the next time you can see a white guy, you're gonna be dead. So, bend over and I'll give you a rectal exam. And then she had to actually give these people rectal exams. Think about how humiliating that was for her. I loved my mother more than I could possibly love anyone on the planet. And I said to her, please stop wearing the sari, wear normal clothes. And she just smiled and shrugged. And the next day, she put the sari right back on and went back to work. People are complicated. As much as my mom wanted us to be white, frankly, she was totally unwilling to give up herself in many respects for white cultures. Once it became very clear to me that we were not supposed to bring this up to her, I remained silent. In order to survive, be successful, I decided I was going to do everything in my power to fit in, and as a result, make her proud and make her believe that the choices that she made to leave her entire family in India behind had to be worthwhile, 100%. Racism is the elephant in every room in America, in white America. And frankly, in my experience, in the Indian American community as well, nobody wants to talk about it. My sister and I didn't talk about it. No one in my family talked about it. If you don't talk about it, maybe it'll just go away.
I think news, we could all agree, makes things worse than when we were younger in our age, right?
No, that's not true. How does the news make things worse?
Because like when I was younger, the things that were shown were not shown when I was younger.
But I feel like it's more rampant now.
She doesn't know how to answer that. She's on the defensive. They've already piled on that woman. But she's exactly right. The news does make things a lot worse. The news is full of propaganda today. Not that it hasn't been in the past. I mean, Walter Durante, won a Pulitzer Prize for lying about the Holodomor in the New York Times. I mean, the news has always had elements of propaganda in it. I just think my gut tells me it's worse today than it's been in a long time. I'm to the point now where the news is so embedded with the government, with the establishment, that if the news has a particular take that they're pushing really hard, I tend to immediately think the opposite is probably true. And yes, the news wants us to beat each other's throats. The media, I'll tell you one thing Trump said that was true. And at the time, being someone in the woke cult and thinking he was a demagogue, I couldn't believe he said the media is the enemy of the people. It is the enemy of the people currently. It is. Look at how embedded they are with the powers that be. Look at the false narratives they push, the Russiagate stuff. Look at how they censor stuff like the Hunter Biden laptop story. They censor whatever the government wants them to. Do we think Operation Mockingbird ended? No. Why would it end? Why would they stop embedding people with the media? And the media has an invested interest because they're embedded with the establishment. They are the establishment in keeping us divided racially and at each other's throats. Why do you think they pushed this? We talked about the lie of this epidemic of unarmed black men being killed by police. Why would they push that narrative? They pushed it. They wanted people to believe something that wasn't true. Look what else they did during all the BLM riots. They downplayed the violence. They ignored the people who were killed, black people who were killed, black people's businesses that were destroyed. They ignored it. They told us on the screen, remember that, Chiron, that said mostly peaceful protests while there's a fire raging in the background? They're liars. That woman there on the right, the white woman they keep piling on, is correct. Things are a lot worse today because of the media.
Now, people have a free pass to just go and be their white supremacist self on display because there's a free pass for it, in my opinion.
You're retarded. Sorry. People have she's saying things are terrible today in 2020. Well, this was filmed in either 2019, I think. That things are worse, and because currently there's a white supremacy pass to be your worst white supremacy self. Are you joking, lady? Are you joking? Well, I guess if you call everything white supremacy, including wanting your kids to not be racist and to live in a colorblind society, if you call that white supremacy, then I guess you do see white supremacy everywhere. So,
I mean, given our current political climate and the leader of our country.
The leader of our country. They're talking about Trump.
When I was in Charleston, South Carolina last summer, I get into my Lyft, and the guy turned around and looked at me and he said, "Lady," he goes, "I hate to have to say this to you, but if I get pulled over, you're just another black woman." And he's black. And he said, "Put your hands up, do as they say, do not make any trouble."
He actually told you that.
Okay, pause. I'm from South Carolina, by the way. Give it up for South Carolina. You're a liar. Okay, if he did say that, it might have been because you look like the kind of person who's going to cause trouble if he gets pulled over. I've seen which is the video. Sandra Bland is one of the ones they like to talk about. Sandra Bland deserved to be arrested that night. Go back and watch the video. They pulled her over for some minor traffic thing, and she reacts in a combative, hostile way, doesn't comply. A lot of these encounters I've been seeing where not all of them, or some of them, I think the police absolutely overstep, and it's an abuse of power. I just watched one the other day. But a lot of the ones where you can't pretend that if you get pulled over by the police and you respond in a combative, aggressive way and you disobey their commands, that you're not doing anything wrong. If this woman got into my ride share and set off any of my red flags that she's a problematic person, I might be like, "Look, hey, if we get pulled over, just don't say anything. Let me handle it. You're gonna probably escalate things, crazy person."
Yeah, of course.
Oh, dear God.
Of course.
To protect her.
To protect him and to protect me.
Where were you?
That's the
South
life
Carolina.
he lives.
And so-
that's his reality.
But that's
insane.
but that
That's his
happens-
reality, whether it's insane or
No, I'm
not.
not saying he's insane. I'm saying it
I
is
get it.
insane.
But
Can you
what
explain
we're
that?
saying is this is America.
I want to ask also to stop acting shocked. So part of white feminism is acting so surprised when
It
we
is a
tell you.
surprise.
But
I'm
it is.
not
Why are you
acting.
telling us not to act the way that we act if it is surprising?
Because
To me, that is
upholds
surprising.
that upholds white supremacy.
It always comes back to that. Do what I say, or you are a white supremacist. This is how many times has she called that woman a white supremacist now for asking questions? Do what I say, or you're a white supremacist. Don't cry, or you're a white supremacist. Don't say colorblind, or you're a white supremacist. Don't say if we're cut, we all bleed red, or you're a white supremacist. Don't react in a shocked way to something that you find shocking, because that means you're a white supremacist. That's what they're saying. I get so sick of this. Actually, I've seen some anti-woke people say this as well, that people need to stop acting shocked to shocking things. No, I don't agree with that. whether you're woke or anti-woke in saying it. Some things are shocking. The appropriate response is to be shocked. There's nothing wrong with being like, wow, that's crazy. That's insane. There's nothing wrong with that. I still see, there are still some things that surprise me. And sometimes I try and remember, we've become, in the anti-woke space, inured to certain types of crazy because we see it all the time now. We see stuff like the BLM riots all the time. We see people destroying property, setting businesses on fire. We see the violence from the left. We see mobs of people attacking conservatives, bloodying them, chasing them down. We see mothers supporting mutilating their own children, cutting their kids' breasts off, giving them sterilizing hormones. We see shocking things all the time, and we've gotten kind of desensitized to it. And we should bring back the shock factor. And never forget, there are normies who need to be shocked by it, who haven't been shocked by it yet. They need to be shocked.
So what I'm saying, I'm asking all of you that when we express to you, and I'm not just talking about Regina and I, because when this dinner is over, like this is a blip, right? You go back into the world. And when people of color trust you enough to tell you their story, believe us without expressing shock, because when you express shock, it pushes you away from the blame.
That makes me very angry because I don't look at that.
I was born in 1950. You know what I expect of white women? Not a damn thing. Nothing. I expect nothing of you because you have never given me anything. I can't trust you, okay?
But how can we come together when you say something like, I will never trust a
This is so manipulative. It's like an abuser. They got the good cop, bad cop there, by the way, but this is so funny. So they're basically saying, don't act shocked. And then to try and get you to comply, they say, I don't expect you to be able to do this. By the way, you've never been able to please me. I don't expect anything from you because you can never give me anything or do anything that I ask. So I don't expect you to be able to stop being shocked. So then what are the other women at that table doing? I need to show her that I can stop being shocked. I'm going to show her. I can show her I wanted her to trust me. She's never been able to trust a white person before. Let me see if I can do it. Let me see if I can do what she's demanding of me. Let me see if I can not cry, not be defensive, not be shocked, not want a colorblind society, not say colorblind. Let me see if I can do all the things I've been told already that I can't do, because if I do them, I'm a white supremacist. Let me see if I can do it because every white person's let her down, but I am going to prove myself to this crazy con artist, racist, abusive person.
A white woman. If we had a really heart-to-heart talk, you said you would never trust me?
Well, I would have to see.
But
You know,
out of all your years in life, you've never trusted a white woman.
I would have to see, meaning you can. I've never trusted a white person, but you could be the one if you follow all these rules. If you do all these things, these abusive things I'm telling you you have to do to make me happy, you might be the one who makes me happy.
well, let me put it this way. The ones I have trusted have come back to disappoint me.
Yeah, that's that.
It's interesting to me that, Marnie, that you're, when Regina's talking about her feelings and how she doesn't trust white women, instead of saying, my God, well, how can, like, why? Like, what about me? That's what you said. Would you trust me? What if we had a hard time?
So while Regina, the black woman's talking about her feelings, which is allowed, Marnie, white woman, you said something about your feelings. How dare you, Marnie? This is... You're not a full human at this table, Marnie. You don't get to have feelings, Marnie. Get with the program.
To heart conversation. Why are your feelings so hurt?
See?
Both of you, though, has been.
The black woman's talking about her feelings. You don't get to have feelings. Why? Because you're a white woman. So abusive.
About.
It's like a hate against us. Like, I feel like it's like.
It's been very aggressive.
That really like hurts me that somebody would not.
But why are your feelings more important than the reality of the violence of our...
Okay. Straw man never said they were more important. Saira. I said I have feelings. Like she said, I have these feelings. And then I said, I have these feelings. And now you are lying and saying, I said my feelings are more important. When in reality, again, projection, no, what's actually happening is you are saying the black woman's feelings are more important. And not just that they're more important, that the white woman doesn't get to have any at all.
Our lives. Imagine if your husband beats you and you confront him. Would you go and massage his back while you're confronting him? Or would you actually be really angry and hurt that he's
Projection, reversal. You are the abusive husband in this scenario, Saira. You guys are the abusive husband.
been beating you? But that's where we come to when you've been a victim of abuse and white women have abused us our whole lives. Why do we have to hold your hand? Can't we just tell you, hey, you guys have hurt us. This is what you've done. Now make it right.
I know Saira, and when she says she doesn't trust white women, and I consider her a friend of mine, I also understand why she doesn't trust me. I don't take that personally.
This is great. This is great. This is cult dynamics. Okay, you've got a subservient white person here who is in a pet role, who is happy to be one of the flying monkeys, who says the right things, and in order to do that, you have to take it all and you have to agree with all of it. And it's going to sound better coming out of the mouth of a white person to say, "This is true. I am racist merely because I'm white, and also I don't get to have feelings because I'm white, and that I don't take that personally, and I also don't get to have an opinion because I'm white, and I don't take that personally, and also Saira is my friend, but she doesn't trust me, and I completely understand that because I'm white." She's the house white. Yes. Thank you, pathetic hermetic. She's the house white. Somebody else said, Justice says, I'm so embarrassed to say I read the start of their book, White Women, on Kindle, and then I returned it for a refund. LOL. Basically, they talk in circles of psycho. Dude, don't be embarrassed. I was fully in this cult for 20 years. It's okay. In fact, people should know what it's about. So if ever, like, if I meet somebody who's kind of woke adjacent, or maybe they're in woke a little bit, or I don't know, but they mention, oh, I've been reading White Fragility. What do you think of it? I'll tell them what I really think of it. And one true thing I can say is it's good to read it so you know what it's about. That's true. So don't be embarrassed that you've checked out one of those books, or even if you used to be in the woke cult yourself, because I used to be in the woke cult. And I know lots of people and people in our audience here at Deprogrammed that used to be in it. And it's a beautiful thing to see people leave it. So, I just wanted to give another thank you to Superbase, gave 4 more Deprogrammed memberships. Sorry, I just saw that. Thank you so much. That's a lot today. Thank you. Okay. Let's continue. Here's the house white. Sounds like a wine.
And I'm asking a question on what could you do, because as a white woman, I mean, I guess it's not like...
we have a lot of work to do. We have so much work to do, yeah. and so I don't take it personally, because I understand that, like,
cult language. Do the work. Educate yourself. It's not my job to educate you. Do the work. Stay in your lane.
That is her life.
But to say you're your friend, but she doesn't trust you, is also a hard thing for me to accept. The same. This is my friend, but she does not trust me.
And also, why on earth is it about you? The fact, and also I want to come back to, why would you say that we're spewing hate? We're telling you what it's like to be us. And
not everybody, you don't have to look at my color of my skin saying I'm white to not trust me. Why don't you look past that I'm white and say she's a good person?
Because her entire life, we've never given her a reason to trust us.
Everything is not
white people. Not all white people are bad.
Everything.
Not every white person is bad.
This is a headbutting of actual liberalism. That's the white woman who's getting piled on. She's still clinging to actual liberalism. Okay. actual anti-racism, if you will. And she's headbutting up against woke social justice, identity Marxism, racism. She's headbutting against that, and she doesn't understand, because she probably walked into this thinking, like a lot of people get pulled into woke, that it's just a progression of liberalism, that it is a kind of liberalism, that it is it says it's anti-racist. Isn't it anti-racist? No, it's not, lady. She doesn't understand why she's the enemy. She's like, but don't we believe in looking past the color? She says this, shouldn't you look past the color of a person's skin and look at their character and see if they're a good person or not? No, they hate that. They hate that. They want you to look at race. You're supposed to look at race. That's how you're supposed to judge. How do I know how to judge people and how to treat them in social justice and woke ideology? It's skin color. It's skin color, it's sex, it's sexuality, it's every single identity group they're in. You look at that, you do a calculation, and then you figure out how to treat them. It's completely racist, lady. I'm sorry you got punked at this dinner. Thank you for the super chat, AD Victorian, for $5. Victorian, thank you. Says, Keri, you should seriously consider turning this into a presentation. This has been one of the best breakdowns of woke tactics I've ever seen. Awesome. I'm glad. I hope people who are in that cult see it. I hope if there are any white women who are looking up Race2Dinner and trying to figure out if they want to go or what it's about, I hope they find this video. I hope they find this video. Don't join the cult. Look, I wasted 20 years in the cult. You don't need to waste your time in it. It's the opposite of what it says it is. But thank you, AD Victorian. Okay.
Part of what
I have this discussion with people that I know, friends, lawyers, everybody, and they'll say, well, Regina, there are some good white people. And I'll go, well, what have the good white people been doing for the last 400?
Well, let's talk about what some of the good white people did, Regina. Well, we mentioned it already, but maybe you are not a student of history and you're not aware that we are one of the first countries to make slavery illegal. There were lots of good white people who were abolitionists who worked with people like Frederick Douglass to abolish, not just to abolish slavery, but if you look over the span of U.S. history, to end racist cultural attitudes, to appeal to our common humanity, to appeal to liberalism, and to appeal to looking past skin color, like this woman just said, and looking at the content of one's character. There were people who, there were some good white men specifically who decided to come together and vote to give women the right to vote, to allow women the right to vote, to allow Black people the right to vote. There were good white people who came together to root racism out of our legal system. And then, of course, there were people like you who put it back in and said, no, it's totally cool to discriminate against people based on race and sex, if you're doing it for the right reasons, huh? Am I right? Harvard, UNC, looking at some of you. In your admissions policies, you think it's perfectly okay to be racist and sexist. Yes, you do. I just hate this because it's so ahistorical. It's such a bald-faced lie. And it's funny because the woke people are the ones who like to pretend like, oh, you guys just want to erase history. No, you do. I don't. I want to see all of history. I want to see all of it. I want to know the mistakes that were made, so hopefully we don't repeat them again and again and again. And I also want to know what got us out of those mistakes. And what the woke people want to do is pretend like we never learned anything. We never fixed anything. There's never been a good white person.
In 50 years. What have you been doing? Obviously, it's not enough because nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed. White ladies considering taking a Race2Dinner class or dinner, considering paying, before you give these monsters $2,500, consider that you just heard one of the two founders say that nothing has changed in 450 years in this country. Nothing has changed. Are you going to give them that money? That's like saying gravity doesn't exist. The sky is red. Cats are dogs. It's a complete fabric. It's an upside down. It's ridiculous on its face. It's a war with reality. It's a crazy, abusive thing to say. It's like I just watched this new cult series, the Twin Flames cult. It's a docuseries. And the leader of that cult, it's good to watch cult documentaries because it helps you see the similarities to things like this. The leader of that cult at some point goes beyond just, he also bilks money from mostly white women who are looking for their twin flame, like their soulmate. And he and his wife they start off bilking money by promising they're going to help you find your twin flame. And at some point, after doing this for a couple years, the cult morphs. He needs more power, more control over everybody. So then they suddenly come to one of their video conferences with all of their cult members, much like this, and they tell them, okay, now, also, I'm Jesus. The wife says, I had a vision that my husband here, the leader of the cult, that he's Jesus, and God gave me this vision. And he comes on and is like, look at my pictures, look at my long hair, don't I look like Jesus? So then the cult kind of changes overnight, and you're watching this going, how could these people stay in this? At this point, it's just completely, I mean, it already seemed crazy, but now it's like completely crazy. But you don't understand cult dynamics. These people got into it slowly, bit by bit. There's an initial brainwashing session, and the brainwashing just continues. They get you to accept one thing after another until you're at a crazy place. In my case, it took me 2 decades to get to the place where suddenly I was being asked to accept that political violence was okay, that violence against people who had differing opinions was okay. Censorship was okay. I was being asked to accept this, that censorship was okay, propaganda was okay. And I was like, wait a minute, none of this is liberal. How did I get here? It's slow. It's by progression. It's by progression. But I brought up the Twin Flames cult documentary because he's saying something that's so crazy on its face. Like this Regina Jackson just said, nothing has changed in 450 years. Nothing has changed. That's ridiculous. That is a lie. You would have to ignore all of history. Are we still enslaving people in this country? In this country. I know it's happening in other countries. Are we still doing that here? Are we denying women the right to vote here because they're women? No. Are we denying black people the right to vote because they're black? No. But nothing's changed. Okay. Okay, crazy person.
When you're in discussions with white people about racism, they like to say, well, MLK changed the world and he did it with nonviolence. And my question to them is, well, if he changed the world, why are we still here?
We're not still here. He did change the world. There have been lots of people who have helped to change the world. He was one of those people. He was a cultural force to be recognized, to be reckoned with, and to be recognized. And he did advocate for nonviolence, which I know you people hate. Social justice people hate. Woke people hate because you like violence. I just mentioned that was one of my wake-up calls, is when I suddenly realized, wait a minute, this world I'm in is like defending violence. That's not a bug of woke, of social justice. It's a feature. They believe in using violence. Just like they believe in using racism and discrimination and sexism, they believe in using violence. That's not liberal. None of this is liberal. So she's criticizing Martin Luther King for advocating for nonviolent resistance, for nonviolence. They've already they disagree with his central tenet, with MLK's central tenet, which was to treat people as individuals, to treat them, to judge them and treat them based on the content of their character rather than on the color of their skin. They absolutely reject that. They are the opposite. And now she goes so far as to say MLK didn't change the world. Nothing's ever changed. He was nothing. He did nothing. The only time they mention MLK is when they try and appropriate, let's use one of their words. They try and take one of his quotes out of context to say that he advocated for things he didn't say. Or later in his life, when he started flirting with communism, some communist ideas, they like to highlight those quotes. But they hate his most famous quote about judging people based on the content of their character, because that goes against this whole ideology. Yeah, it sounds like she's advocating for violence. She is advocating for violence.
50 plus years after his death.
I just want you to get clear. We're trying to tell you what it's like. People's feelings are hurt. We're spewing hate. So we are trying to tell you, and the first thing that a lot of you at this table have done has been this. And I want you to sit with that. I just want you to sit with that. That's all.
One of the things they like to say, this reminds me of, they like to say that you need to sit in your discomfort. They use the sit word a lot, that you need to sit down and shut up and listen to voices of color, except not any voice of color that disagrees with woke, right? Because it's not really what it's about. At the end of the day, it's about only listen to woke, like cult doctrine. Only listen to woke, don't listen to anything critical of it. So sit down and shut up, though, they say, and sit in your discomfort, which is hilarious. I just wanted to say hello to my friend Lindsay. She says, "Hey, Keri, it's Lindsay. I saw your post about this. I had to see it to believe. Fantastic job breaking down the cult tactics around this." Thank you for being here, lady.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye. I have a phone call coming up with my Westchester people. We have 2 hosts in Westchester.
Oh my God, did you see her mug? She votes for women, guys. It doesn't matter what the policy is. It doesn't matter. She's not voting for content of character or opinions or philosophies or principles or policies. She's just voting for what identity group a person's in. If they're a woman, I used to vote that way when I was woke.
Bye. I have a phone call coming up with my Westchester people. We have 2 hosts in Westchester, and again, you know, if it's out of town, they're doing a lot more fundraising, so it's that much more. Now they have to go, and they have to not only tell friends and family and people in their network, like,
I have a question.
Sweetheart.
Obviously, I had a caller, then we can, and then do we have to get a new caller?
Yeah, we do. Okay. Can I have some space right now?
Yeah.
Thanks, bud. For me?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. Sharing is caring. We have a host that was,
even though you're a man,
like, you know, Genevieve, this is really important to me. And hey, that's one of Desmond's paper people. Drop it. Sorry, buddy. Here you go. This is like all day long losing my train of thought. Oh, here they are. Hey, is this Shannon and Diana? Yay! So I love hearing all the work that you're doing. And I mean, you said 100 people showed up to that first meeting. How many are like still?
I like Genevieve a lot. I think that she's extremely endearing and kind and really wants to do good. We need a white woman in that position because white women have to hear this from other white women.
And I'm from New York, and I can tell you from personal experience that we need it in New York.
We're not credible in some ways until, frankly, we get in the room and we have some time to work with these women. But before the dinners, white women respond much better to other white women than they would with us. And that, in a nutshell, is white supremacy.
All right. Well, thank you both.
Okay.
So this is why we selected this one house white, is because we need a white face on what we're selling. And so she really wanted to be our friend, as she said earlier, not knowing that we don't have friends, we only have allies. And we saw her as a potential ally and someone that we could use, let's say a lesser narcissist to us, the greater narcissist, to hook women into the program and sell it for us. Not to mention she does a lot of the work for us and a lot of the lead work. And we saw her at the beginning of the documentary bringing in all of the new deals and helping us to franchise this and take it big and make more money. So that's the story behind our house white.
So much. I really appreciate it. And we will, you're going to hear from me very soon.
What else happened today, babe?
Yeah, tech class.
Ooh. Is that where you emailed me from?
Yeah.
Really?
We were using, they taught us how to delete all the spam emails.
Have you also figured out how to delete all the other 20 email addresses you've created?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Have you done that?
Not yet. I figured that out.
Okay. Let's do that next.
Okay, so we're having a vegetarian meal.
Why don't you put him to work?
Can you? Have you used a bigger knife before?
Yep.
No.
He looks like he's in control.
Yeah, and then the next thing you have is a finger that.
Well, we'll work through it.
We'll work with the cutoff finger.
Okay.
Cheers. Happy New Year.
Cheers.
Somebody said these poor kids, and yes, I actually I view these kids the same way I view the kids at oh gosh, the Westboro Baptist Church protests, where you see those hateful people with the gods. They come with the signs that say God hates fags. They come to people's funerals and stuff with those signs, and they have the kids with them who are in that cult. And or the kids on Jerry Springer used to see KKK members and like the kids in that cult, and these kids are no different. These kids are no different. I do feel sorry for them, but hopefully they work their way out of it in adulthood. A lot of kids have grown up in less than ideal situations and all kinds of crazy cults and belief systems and abusive situations and anything you can think of. So God bless them.
When we were at some dinner and my dad asked, who is an inspiration in your life? And Eliana said, you.
Did you? That really makes me feel good. Thank you.
It's because you're super brave and you speak out against what's wrong. So that's cool.
Oh my God. Thank you. That's why we do what we do, right?
Yep.
Thank you, Eliana. Yeah, you just tell the truth, right? That's a good lesson in life. Always tell the truth.
And be brave.
This just became the best thing that happened to me in 2020.
It is a good lesson in life to always tell the truth. For example, you should tell the truth that many things have changed in the past 450 years in the United States, instead of lying to children and telling them that MLK never did anything and that nothing's ever changed, and that things are exactly the same as they used to be when women couldn't vote and Black people couldn't vote, and we kept Black people in slavery.
How many times have you guys had a conversation directly about race in school or with your friends?
Never. I didn't really. Once on Martin Luther King Day, all I talked about was the I Have a Dream speech.
Mm.
My friend's little sister is being bullied for being Jewish, and she got a note saying to kill herself, and the school isn't really doing anything about it. She said that she didn't believe in Santa Claus because she was Jewish, and then a bunch of people held her down and almost
God.
beat her up, and there was 1 or 2 kids trying to help her, but there wasn't much they could do.
And that's the thing. It's the silence of the masses that,
Yeah.
In Spanish class, an anonymous person said that I should leave the school for being brown, and every single person at the table and the table behind us heard, and they just went back to writing.
We all get lumped together, right, Poop?
Yeah.
Growing up, this happened all the time. And I told...
I'm sorry, did she call her kid Poop? I just thought that was funny.
My parents one time, my mom, and basically she was like, just stop. Like, this is the way it is. So I never said anything again. And that's what part of I felt like I deserved it. This is just part and parcel. And so it felt like a little bit of a victory to me that he at least told me. He felt unsafe. He felt unsafe at the school. So
I'm sorry, why do you call your kid Poop? We all get lumped together, right? Poop, just like Poop. I'm just kidding. Nicknames are silly.
lot for kids to deal with. I'm very sorry, Bubby.
I am too.
It's okay.
Do we have a white person ban in this country right now? Do we have a white woman ban in this country right now? Do we have a Christian ban in this country right now? Do we have a Jewish ban in this country? What ban do we have in this country right now?
Here we go. We're moving into another lie. When Trump was elected, remember they were saying that he instituted a Muslim ban. There was no ban on people based on what religion they were a part of, Muslim or otherwise. There was no Muslim ban. There was a travel ban on, I think it was 7 countries, 6 of which had previously already been put on the list by Obama. Correct my numbers if I'm wrong, you guys in the chat. I haven't looked at the so-called Muslim ban in a long time, but it was a list of countries predominantly, almost all of the countries on the list had already been picked to be on the list by Obama. Trump added 1 or 2 countries, and these were countries that they decided they should put a temporary ban on travel to the U.S. because of high incidence of terrorism, radical Islamic terrorism in those countries. There was never any ban that said Muslim people cannot travel to the United States. Again, Saira said something true, just like the devil can speak scripture. The devil's very familiar with scripture. Saira said something true just a few seconds ago. She said, you should always speak the truth. You should. And once you learn that there was never a Muslim ban, I can understand if you're one of the people who there's so much, millions upon millions of dollars of propaganda aimed at convincing you of things that aren't true. Currently, they're doing that with the so-called don't say gay ban, which is not a don't say gay ban. I can understand being misled by the propaganda. And if you never look into it yourself and you just believe what the media, the enemy of the people, is telling you, I can understand you walking around saying ignorant things like there's a Muslim ban. But you're an adult. You're an adult and you have a responsibility to know what you're saying. You have a responsibility to speak truth. And I guarantee you, Saira knows. Saira knows there was no Muslim ban. Now, these women at the dinner who are listening to her and maybe believing this, some of them, I'm sure, are just being misled, maybe all of them. But that lady knows and is lying, and she is not speaking truth
right now.
Muslim.
We have a
Muslim
ban.
We have a Muslim ban.
And
No,
it
we
makes
never
sense
did.
with what happened with my son, because the day before he got in the fight with the friend who was not a friend but was Muslim. The day before, I guess on the internet, it was Kill the Muslims Day.
Oh my God.
Which he didn't know about, I didn't know about, but the school knew about. So then when he got in a fight with a boy in his class who's Muslim that apparently had been going on for years, of course, then my son, it makes sense. The school would be hypersensitive. But as a mother, how do I explain that to my son? Like, I don't know what is the right thing to say to him.
So I'll tell you what, that's your privilege. And you're acknowledging it.
Of course.
To say, I don't know how to talk to my son, he experienced in his mind, and in my mind, he absolutely didn't. He experienced a tiny little fraction. My little 8-year-old boy, who's the sweetest little boy on the planet, his first week of school in the 2nd grade, a little white girl told him, your skin is disgusting. You don't belong in this school.
Well, how can we help our kids? How can we change it? Like, we have young children. What would you say? What do we do as parents with young children? How do we change this to not
acknowledging your racism and acknowledging your white privilege and having a conversation with your kids from the time that they were little? And step one, truly, and it seems easy, but
They want to target children in addition to targeting wealthy, liberal, white women. They also want to target children because children are more easily manipulated. And it's one of the reasons they go after white women is because they want these white women to brainwash their own kids for them. And there are a large number of white women who are doing it. There are a large number of white women who are letting their kids' breasts be cut off, who are letting their kids take sterilizing hormones. White women are very susceptible to this belief system. I wanted to show you something in case there's any people, leftist people watching this and you don't want to look it up yourself. I'm going to show you this because look here, just a quick fact check. It was a travel ban. Even Wikipedia, which is definitely leftist leaning and they censor things. I just had something censored last week. They push propaganda. Even they had to call it the Trump travel ban because it was not a Muslim ban. Never anywhere in the executive order did it say Muslim people can't travel to the US. It's a bald-faced lie. And you should have more respect for yourself as an adult than to spread lies, even if it doesn't support your ideology. Accept an uncomfortable truth, if you will. So the original travel ban was passed in January 2017, and it was for people from 7 countries. Yes, majority Muslim countries. That's a descriptor. Those countries were majority Muslim, and they were selected because they had had high incidence of radical Islamic terrorism. Yes, but there was never a ban that said Muslim people can't come here. These were the countries: Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. It was a temporary ban for 90 days, so for 3 months, with certain exceptions. How did they pick those? By the way, they amended it. Let's look at this. They amended it in February, a month later. In March, 2 months later. And they took out Iraq, basically. It was the same. They just took out Iraq. They made it 6 countries. How did they pick these countries? Well, they picked them the same way Obama did when he picked them. How did the Trump admit? This is from CNN. It's one of your leftist news sources, so you believe it's true, right? It's you guys only believe things if it comes from a certain source. You should be skeptical of all of the news, all of it. How the Trump admin chose the 7 countries in the immigration executive order. Spicer at the time said, well, there were further travel restrictions already in place from those 7 countries. Yeah, they did. Here we go. Here's the section. Restrictions from Obama years broadened to ban. In December of 2015, President Obama signed into law a measure placing limited restrictions on certain travelers. A travel ban, a temporary travel ban. To those who had been to Iran, Iraq, Sudan, or Syria. 2 months later, Obama added Libya and Somalia. That's 6 countries of the 7. Oh, wait, sorry. Libya, Somalia, and Yemen. All 7 of them, Obama had listed, all 7 of them. You need to look things up. I know that a liar like Saira Rao knows this. I'm not telling her to look it up because she knows she's lying to you. I'm talking to the gullible people that she is manipulating. The naive people. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's not bad to be naive. I've been called naive a lot. I'm learning though. When you're naive, you assume the best in people sometimes. You assume good intent. You assume they wouldn't lie. You assume the media wouldn't call something a Muslim ban unless it really was a ban on Muslims. You assume a lot. Okay, we're 2 hours in to today's video, and we're still only 38 minutes into this documentary. I think we're going to take another break. This will be good because I had to take some time off from the podcast last week because I was traveling for Chrissy Mayer's Content House. And why don't we just break this up into several videos? It is the Christmas season. We can do what we want. I think maybe tomorrow we'll pick this back up. I think I might be able to do this again tomorrow. Tonight, my husband and I, we're going to have a baking night, but I think instead we're going to be painting the Deprogrammed studio. He was finishing up some texturing this morning, and then I think by tonight, hopefully, knock on wood, I'm going to be able to start painting the walls. So if I get enough of that done, then tomorrow I think I could do another one of these if you guys want to see one. Robert says it's a lot of horrible to digest. Yes, it is. We have to break it up. And I think it's important to pause it to really explain what they're doing like this, and not let them get away with lies. And I have to take a break because it's been 2 hours, and also I have to go to the bathroom. I have a 2-hour bladder, people. I'm an older lady. I don't know how people stream past 2 hours. I'm like, I can't do it. Oh, hey, Cowgirl Carpentry. Good to see you. Thank you for the $5 super chat. She says, future sliding board money. Future sliding board money. I'm not going to out your real name because maybe you don't want that. So I'm just going to say Cowboy Carpentry is brilliant and can build anything, and has built. I was joking about putting a slide somewhere in my house, which is funny. Thank you for the super chat. I did stay. I should tell you, I got to stay at an Airbnb in Shreveport once, Cowgirl Carpentry, and it was a tree house. The woman who rented the place out on Airbnb was an architect, and she had built several tree houses. She used to live in this tree house in Shreveport, and now she's as an elderly woman, she had moved in with family, but she put the original treehouse up as a rental, and the back door of the treehouse was a slide. It was amazing. I loved it. The night that we got there, it was raining and muddy, and I just went down that slide in the rain. There was a big old mud puddle. It's like, this is amazing. Like, just such a silly, fun thing to do. I love the idea of someone just living in a treehouse. Anyway, okay. Lettuce says, it's easy for me to sift through this con with Keri pulling the curtain back. It would be different sitting there surrounded by the con. Yes. It's hard you can't watch something like this without pausing it to challenge what you're seeing because it is craziness. Okay. We had a silly poll. Let's see if I can see before we go. What were the results of the poll? It was a silly poll. Someone said, hey, I saw someone say, hey, leave Pee Wee Herman out of this. He's great, and he's passed on. I'm like, why I put Pee Wee in there. I love Pee Wee Herman. Anybody who watches this show regularly knows Pee Wee is one of my favorite comedians of all time. In fact, my wedding song, when I came down the aisle for my wedding, was Tequila, which was a nod to Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure when he dances at the biker bar. Okay, so the poll was, who would you like to see at one of these racist dinners? And the options were, which would be funnier, basically, Borat, Alex Stein 99, Mr. Bean, or Pee Wee Herman. And it looks like Alex Stein 99 won. So I might have to get in touch with Alex and set something up. See if I can help him sneak into something. That's really funny. Thank you guys for doing the poll. I need to do more polls. They're fun. There we go. We ended it. There's the results. Pee Wee Herman would be really funny at one of these. So would Mr. Bean, though. Any of these guys would be really funny at one of these dinners. Okay, we're wrapping up. I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday. If you like the show, if it's your first time here, please consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already subscribed, or hitting the like button or leaving a comment. Even if you didn't like it, leave a comment. That helps with the algorithm. We are at 38 minutes in this video, and we're going to pick it up tomorrow. I will announce what time, and we're going to do part 3. Why not? We're going to do it. And I hope these videos are found when people are looking for information about Race2Dinner, and that they consider some of the stuff I'm pointing out before they pay all that money to go be programmed by a bunch of con artists. Okay. Take care, guys. I'll talk to you later.